welcome Vivek. Sorry, uh, I request Nasuddin sir to welcome Rizwan sir. We also have with us Dr. Vivek Nanoti sir. He is he's the director LTJSS Nagpur first. Nagpur first. I request Dr. Ravizuddin sir to welcome him. Among the members, we have Dr. Kazi Zakiuddin sir. I request Amitabh Khanna sir to welcome him. We have Mr. Amitabh Khanna sir. He's the Executive Chairperson NF and President Vidhan Association Semiconductors. I request Professor S.M. Ali sir to welcome him. I now request Dr. Rizwan Ahmed sir to kindly continue with the session.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Nagpur First, I welcome you here for the Global Leadership Talk. We are very excited that we have a very accomplished speaker amongst us. So I have been given the opportunity to introduce him, but at the same time, I need to also briefly talk about NF, what we do at NF, right? And maybe some of the other activities which are part of Nagpur First Foundation. So as you must have seen some of the NF executive members on the dais. So we every year organize an event called as Global Nagpur Summit. This is going to be our 11th edition this year. So I request all of you to note the dates for this year. It's going to be 7th and 8th December, which is next month. So the first day of the summit is going to be at IIM Nagpur, wherein we'll have the inaugural session for Global Nagpur Summit. And more importantly, we'll also have our first track, which is social track. And Tanveer Mirza sir is the chair for that track. And it's a very good showcase of all the NGOs from the region, wherein we try to make use of this platform to help them. The second day of the summit, we call it as a City Growth Conference. And this is hosted at Chitnavis Center next to Hislop College in Civil Lines. This year, we have two tracks. So the first track is, I'm the track chair, we call it as a technology track. And in technology track, we are trying to bring in all the experts across the globe from US, Singapore, and other parts of the world. And idea is how we can make Nagpur basically a global hub as far as technology is considered. And that with that intent, right, we have representation from across the globe, including various parts of India. And there's again a full day session on 8th as part of technology summit. And the second track on the same day on 8th is on environment. And you all know, right, we are seeing a lot of environmental changes around us, which is impacting all of us, maybe unseasonal rains. Maybe you are getting to see three weathers in a single day, right? Maybe it is very hot, at some time it's very cold, and at times it's raining, right? You get to see all the three things on a single day. And more importantly, we all need to also sensitize people around us for kind of doing waste management. In a way, we are not doing enough, right? So that we are able to do proper waste management of our city. So with that thought, we are also bringing in a lot of experts from across India and as well as outside India, so that we are focusing on future in terms of climate change, sustainable development goals, and more importantly, environment around us. So a lot of good sessions on both the days. And in the evening, we also arrange a special evening, which is called as Global Nagpur Awards, wherein we identify global luminaries, right, who are from Nagpur and around Vidarbha, who have brought laurel to our cities by making our city proud by their achievements. So we kind of give them awards in 16 different categories so that we can recognize their accomplishments and bring them in front of the audience which is attending the GNA, as well as recognizing all their efforts. So 2 exciting days, 7th and 8th. And apart from this annual summit, we also organize global leadership talks. One talk you all are attending here. This talk is attended in person as well as we broadcast it live, so that most of our members were not able to come and attend it in person. They have the recording available on the NF Facebook page, right? And they can attend those sessions even post event as well. So for today's talks, we have one such luminary, right, who is from Nagpur, and he has really made Nagpur proud, right, after graduating from here, right, from VNIT. How many of you know VNIT? Almost everyone, right? That's one of our biggest top engineering colleges, right? And as I was hearing, right, one thing which happens generally, and that is what we are trying to change, is once you graduate, getting a job, you need to kind of move out of Nagpur. So same thing happened with him. He was telling us as soon as he finished his graduation from VNIT, he moved out so that he could be part of semiconductor industry, right? And we make it great. So his profile is very long, but I'll take a minute, right? A minute or 2 minutes, right? So that I can brief everyone, so that you know, right, in a way, how privileged we are to have such a accomplished speaker to be amongst us. So, Mr. Vivek is an innovative leader with over 2 decades of engineering expertise in electronic engineering and VLSI. So, some of you who understand VLSI, right? I'm talking about a lot of complex things, right? Which is not easy to make. We just are the users of some of these complex products, right? Which are created. Maybe it could be a cell phone, maybe a laptop or a television, right? We only see the end product. He has demonstrated his leadership in areas of silicon engineering. I'm sure he'll talk what silicon engineering is in a brief, so that all of us who are non-technical would understand what silicon engineering means. Developing teams, customer engagement, and development of management processes. So he is very diversified as a person. He is technical as well as business focused, which is very rare to find. He currently leads international teams based in Asia, which includes India and Japan. They do have offices in Pune and Bangalore, and they're expanding in a big way. This is what I'm hearing. I was requesting him that, okay, you should also look at how we can make Nagpur a semiconductor hub, right? And you expand here in future. Right? I'm hoping, based on the learning from this session, right, we implement some of the things here in Nagpur, so that when they have the next expansion, Nagpur could be on their radar to do that expansion. Again, he's from United States. That's the majority of his team is, and he leads the teams in United States as well. He's well versed in VLSI, hardware design process that includes hardware design, FPGA design, and prototyping, pre and post silicon validation and applications engineering. I'm sorry, मुझे 25 साल हो गए अभी इंजीनियरिंग किए हुए, तो मुझे अपने इंजीनियरिंग की याद आ रही है in terms of learning EDC and other subjects, right? Where I used to kind of listen to some of these keywords. So I'm hoping, right, through this session, I could relive those old days and maybe possibly catch up on the last 25 years in terms of new innovations which have come up. He's also passionate about learning and development of processes for efficient management of engineering teams. Vivek regularly interacts with tier 1 customers. So tier 1 customers means companies who are already having billions and billion dollars of revenue, right? And that's what his portfolio is. He's very innovative, out-of-box thinker, and leader responsible for all aspects of silicon engineering. Vivek is also passionate about nature and nature and conservation, and a volunteer leader of local Audubon Society chapter. He is an advanced amateur wildlife and nature and bird photographer. And I must tell you, I've seen his WhatsApp DP, and I'm seeing a bird. I have not seen that on a National Geographic or maybe other channels, at least in my life, right? So maybe we'll hear it from him, right? What that bird is about. So that can tell you, right? Apart from being a technologist, he's an avid photographer, right? Thinking about nature and birds around us, right? Which is just amazing. So you can see, right? We have a very unique personality amongst us in terms of his experience, expertise, right? In the silicon and semiconductor industry, plus other side of him, right, which is more focused around environment and other aspects wherein he is capturing the beauty around us, right? So let's clap for the amazing speaker. Thank you once again for being here, right, embracing this occasion and maybe enlightening us with your knowledge. Thank you once again. Thank you, Rizwan. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope, well, first of all, welcome and thank you for your time. And I hope that someone has this recording because I want to make sure that my boss hears all the praise. Okay. So, welcome. Today we're going to talk about semiconductor market in general. What is a semiconductor? You know, people talk about semiconductors all the time. What does it even mean? So we'll start there and then we'll go through that. So let's dive in. So, you know, today I'm sure every one of you has one of these, right? You probably drove a car or came in some vehicle here. You probably watch TV or you're watching it right now, right? You have used laptops, you have used some washing machines, and you're being protected by some advanced weaponry, including some fighter jets. All of these things, the one thing that is common amongst all of these is semiconductors. And before you even know it, semiconductors have touched your lives. It's that pervasive. And short of being a tribal who is collecting firewood in the forest, trust me, everybody uses semiconductors. So what are they? Right. So today we'll talk about the history of the semiconductor industry. It's only about 75 years old. Semiconductors are not that old. Humanity has been around for tens of thousands of years. Semiconductors are a very recent phenomenon in our lives as humans. So then we talk about semiconductor industry from an Indian perspective. What are we doing in India for semiconductors, right? And then we talk about semiconductor opportunities in India, and then opportunities for students. Many of you are students, so you know this is something. Hopefully, it answers a few questions, and then we'll save about 10 minutes for questions and answers. So that's our agenda for today. Okay, so what is a semiconductor? A conductor, as you all know, allows a free flow of electricity. Once you attach potential, current will flow. An insulator, on the other hand, does not allow flow of electricity at all. Like wood is an insulator, rubber is an insulator, plastics are insulators. So semiconductor allows for controlled flow of electricity. You can control it very easily. That's all there is to a semiconductor. And the keyword here is control, and you need to be able to control. So visually speaking, you have a conductor, you apply potential, the conductor will conduct electricity, insulator won't. And semiconductor, you can control when the electricity flows. This is very simple representation of a semiconductor. In other words, semiconductor is a switch. The way we use semiconductor is use it as a switch. So in about 1950, the first computer, which was an ENIAC, had about 17,500 such switches. Each switch was this big. Today, this iPhone, you know, my iPhone has several tens of billions of these switches. Okay, and this is a 2 nanometer device. Each switch is 1/20,000th of the width of your human hair. Okay, that's how small this is. And there are about 20 to 25 billion of these. Apple won't tell us how many there are, but this is pretty good. Okay. So In other words, we have come a long way since 1950, and the miniaturization has got us here today. The left one is actually not a semiconductor, it's a vacuum tube based device. The right one is a semiconductor. The left one was as big as this room. The right one has two of these in this size, right? And the amount of processing power that the right one has is probably 20 times more powerful than the processing power of the Hubble telescope, which was just 10 years ago. So the rate at which the innovation happens in semiconductors is astounding. There is no other technology that moves this fast. And one of the most diverse industries that people talk about is cars. Cars have about 5,000 employees. Semiconductors have about 30,000. Okay. If cars have supply chains that are complicated, semiconductors have supply chains that are impossible. It's the fact that it actually all works together is a miracle. So let's talk about the business of semiconductors, right? So today, the semiconductor industry is about $600 billion worldwide. That's how much the revenue per year is. And in about 4 years, we will cross 1 trillion. So 1 trillion is 85 lakh crores. Okay, it's absolutely insane amount of money. India's industry is only about is very small but growing. And if you, I just Googled this 2 days ago. Okay? India Semiconductors, just run that Google, right? And you can see all these headlines. Semiconductor industry, government is doing a lot of things. There is this thing called India Semiconductor Mission. They are the ones under the government, science and technology ministry that are trying to bring semiconductor manufacturing to India. Narendra Modi has inaugurated several semiconductor units. But the key here is that India wants to become a semiconductor powerhouse, and it is not there today. India consumes only about 3% of world semiconductors. And within the next decade, that should grow to about 10%. And it may seem small, but it's huge. It will grow more than 3.5x in that time. There is no industry that grows this fast, even today, even in India. Even IT industry grows only like 10%, 15%. This is over 30% growth yearly. So why does India need semiconductors, right? So semiconductors are literally the backbone of digital economy. I think Vivanji, we talked about this. IT revolution is possible because of semiconductors. If semiconductors were not there, you wouldn't have any of this IT revolution. Everything you do has a semiconductor base. They're extremely difficult to manufacture. In fact, the advanced semiconductors are actually manufactured only in 2 countries, Taiwan and Korea. Okay? And even Korea is falling behind. No China, no US, no Germany, no Europe. Just those 2 places, right? They are essential for everyday life. Your machines that keep you alive in the hospitals to making sure that you don't die in the cars, they're all controlled by semiconductors. The supply chains span many countries. There are certain things in semiconductor manufacturing that only one country can build. So this is very, very different from cars. Cars, many countries can build. We built our own cars even in 80s, right? We have never been able to build our semiconductors at the state of the art level. And high-tech weapons are impossible without semiconductors. So any weapons you see in wars, just for even as deterrents, are not possible without semiconductors. So they are extremely important for a nation. And essentially, they are like the oil. If you don't have oil, you can't run a country. If you don't have semiconductors, you can't run a country. Right? It's that important. So what is the state of the art? The smallest transistor we can build today, transistor linked switch, is 2 nanometers. It's very, very tiny. 2 nanometers is about 10 to 20 atoms of silicon stacked on top of each other. That's all. Just 20 semiconductor atoms. The semiconductor fab is higher as this node, what is this 2 nanometer node, is low. So for example, a 5 nanometer cost, fabrication factory cost is lower than a 2 nanometer cost. And 12 nanometer is lower than 5 nanometer and so on and so forth. So fabs are currently producing semiconductors at 3, 5, 12, sorry, I have another 18, 28, and 40 nanometers. And they are, all of these semiconductors are being produced today in the world. And the depreciation cost for a 2 nanometer fab is a whopping 11 lakh rupees per minute. If you build a fab and you don't use it for 1 minute, you've lost 11 lakh rupees. So by the time I finish this talk today, we will be talking tens of crores being lost, right? So this is how expensive this is. So, and even if I'm off by a factor of 2x, I just did this calculation today. It is still 5 lakh rupees a minute. So it's not really cheap by any stretch of imagination. So how is India trying to do this? So India is trying to build a semiconductor ecosystem. So we'll talk about what an ecosystem is. And the mission for the semiconductor mission that India semiconductor mission, the government of India enterprise is about $10 billion. Okay? And the cost of making a fab, 2 nanometer fab today is about $28 billion. So this money will not fund even one fab. Okay? And our entire revenue for Indian semiconductor production today is 27 billion. It is still less than the cost of one fab. So the current ISM strategy can be best summarized as crawl, walk, run. So you start off at a higher node, you understand how to do it well, then you go down the path. So we are not going to get 18 nanometer fab here anytime soon. And so, but that doesn't mean that the opportunity don't exist. A lot of opportunities do exist. Right? So then let's talk about the ecosystem. Okay, what is an ecosystem? So, you know, I like nature, I go photographing birds and tigers. So as you know, Tadoba is close to here. Why are there tigers in Tadoba? Because the ecosystem supports that, you know, tigers in Tadoba. There is a lot of prey, there is, you know, the prey thrives, and so the tigers thrive. If you take away the prey, the tigers will go away. So ecosystem is a system where things can thrive, right? And semiconductor market segments, all of them, even the ancillary peripheral units, have a lot of capital allocation requirements, meaning the money to be spent to build a factory is not like putting a Ringna unit. You can't do that. And the minimum cost of these things is hundreds of millions of dollars. So I'm going to go from bottoms up. So semiconductor IP suppliers, IP stands for intellectual property. So they just design things and then they sell the design or license the design to some other companies who can use it to build products, right? These have the least capex requirements. Okay? Then material suppliers of silicon wafers, gases, ultra purified water, those kind of things. Okay, those don't have that many requirements. Next is EDA companies. EDA stands for electronic design automation. These are the tools that are used for building semiconductors. And then equipment manufacturers, followed by what are called IDEMs or fabless chip companies. These are the companies that actually design the semiconductors. IDEMs also manufacture their own semiconductors. Fabless companies just get it manufactured from the fabs. And then the last ones are fabs or foundries. So these are from bottom to top, the least capital allocation requirements to the highest capital allocation requirements. The company I work for is a fabless chip company. So we design, we don't manufacture, we test and we sell. Okay, all the manufacturing is done by a foundry. In our case, mostly a company called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, which is probably the leading foundry in the world. Okay, so beyond semiconductor, there are a lot of what are called ancillary, industries. So fabs make wafers, and wafers have individual chips. So these little things that you see, they are, there's something wrong with this, but anyway, let's keep going. Those individual things have to be cut from the wafer, they have to be tested, and they have to be, then the good ones can be sold, right? So, yeah. So individual chips are called dies. They must be assembled into a package. So they go into a package that you can put on a PCB, and then you can actually assemble the final product, right? That's the whole thing. So beyond semiconductor, there is package assembly and test operation, also called ATP. This is a separate industry that takes the wafers and then provides you the individual chips. There is PCB design. The chips go on a PCB. Someone has to design the PCB, manufacture them, right? Assembly and test for the PCBs. And final product assembly, like someone has to make the actual phone or the TV or the laptop, that kind of stuff. And then there's logistics. So a lot of people, if you look at the number of people that are employed by these industries, is way more than semiconductor industry itself. Like by an order of magnitude, 10x, 20x more. So just getting the semiconductor industry in provides employment for a lot of people. To recap, semiconductor manufacturing is extremely expensive and complex with supply chains stretching worldwide. There are many industries beyond semiconductor manufacturing called the ecosystem that allow for many opportunities. And as I was telling earlier, rising tide lifts everyone. So when the industry is growing, you have a lot more opportunities, and it's a good, really good career path for all the young professionals. And India is very well poised to grow into the semiconductor industry. In fact, Indian semiconductor industry will grow faster than the global semiconductor industry, at least for the next decade. So that is pretty impressive. And the reason for that is we're starting small. So when you're starting small, our growth is very high. Oh, maybe, yeah, it's under here. I see. Okay. No worries. Okay, so what are our opportunities, right? So semiconductor manufacturing or putting a foundry is the realm of Tata's and Birlas. Okay, so if you have that kind of money, you can go talk to Modi ji or Ji and we can talk about how to put it together. But the secondary industries are quite interesting because these are the ones we can build as lower capital equipment allocation costs. And they are ATP, printed circuit boards, test and assembly lines. And these are opportunities at the entrepreneur level. Local entrepreneurs can actually do a lot of things. And in places like Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai, Noida, this actually is done already. So I want to delve into each of these a little bit more individually, so we can talk about this, and then we can talk about the students, opportunities for students. Okay, so ATP, I'm just going to build this out. This is assembly, test, and packaging. It's also mainly a manufacturing industry, meaning it's actually a plant. Okay. And their customers are all these integrated device manufacturers who design their own semiconductors, and also companies like ours, fabless semiconductor companies. It's a fairly high capex, although not as much as a fab. A fab is obscene, this is high. Okay. They're not moving, but it's yeah. Okay, so PCB is basically printed circuit boards. All these things have printed circuit boards, and it's mainly manufacturing. You receive the packaged dies from their customers and provide the PCBs to their customers. Right? Customers are companies like PC manufacturers, Apple, those kind of customers. And this is lower capex than ATP houses, several tens to low hundreds of millions of dollars, but still fairly capital intensive. And then the last one is services. So services is something like, like IT, more like IT, where there is very little barrier to entry, but it's also very easy to set up, relatively speaking. So very wide field because the services can be for the entire ecosystem. There are many different places where you can provide services. They can be further divided into niche areas in each of the semiconductor domain. Like we talked about the 6 of them, every one of them you can provide services for. So design services, IP development services, verification services, simulation services, these are all services, right? Layout services for semiconductors and also for the APP and also for PCB. These are all services on the design side. On the chip side, several large companies are already doing this. So for example, companies like Wipro and HCL and E-Info chips, those kind of companies actually already provide this service. They do front-end design, they do design verification, they do design for testability, physical design, and documentation. These are all services provided by these companies. India has a lot of manpower that is fairly skilled, so they will outsource this to some company and they can provide these services on an as-needed basis. And this is relatively straightforward. Also doesn't have a lot of design site fidelity, meaning you can be anywhere and you can still be able to do it. You can sit at home and do it. Right? Then there are niche areas, these are less common. So AT test development for testing the wafers, product engineering support, someone has to analyze the yields, things like that. Post-silicon validation, this is something my groups do, making sure that the design is working as expected. And reliability testing, how far can you push the design, how many years it will last, things like that. These are all fairly niche and they're less common. But there are companies doing this too. There's a company that the CEO is actually my friend called Tesol. It's based in Bangalore and they are pioneers in this. They started this and they are doing this very well. And then on the ATP and PCB side, there are service opportunities just like chips. You can do all of that just for the ATP market, right? PCB and other ancillary industries have a lot of service opportunities. Layout can be one of the service. And we regularly outsource some of these things to some other companies because we don't want to hire people to do this. This is a constant service that we do. So PCB schematic design, layout, manufacturability, and all of that. And you can also do pilot production services. These are small assembly lines that make a few PCBs. They cannot do hundreds of thousands, but they can do tens, they can do hundreds, they can do up to 500. So if you look at to recap it all, so there are design and ancillary semiconductor ecosystem services. There is high volume PCB manufacturing, assembly and test, high volume ATP, and then chip manufacturing. And if you look at the capital equipment requirement, the lower is the most easiest one, the higher is the most difficult one. Much more money top, less money at the bottom. Barrier to entry, how soon can someone else do it, what you're doing? Much more difficult to put a chip industry together than putting a design services company together. Very easy to do that. And site fidelity, you can't put a chip manufacturing facility anywhere you want. It has to have an ecosystem with it together. On the other hand, the services company, you can start in Nagpur, no problem. So for Nagpur, if I had to concentrate, that's where we will concentrate. Okay? It's kind of difficult to put a chip industry in Nagpur. It doesn't have the ecosystem. But there is really no reason why you can't do a design services company in Nagpur. It's not ideal, but it's doable. Okay, so opportunities for students. This is my last section, and then we can take questions for about 10 minutes. So for students, good education is a prerequisite with either BE electronics or BE computer science. Those are the two things we look at. And we prefer masters because there are not very many people, or at least universities that offer VLSI as a bachelor. VNIT will start next year, but I don't know of very many other institutes that do that. So master is VLSI design should be the aim today. If someone wants to do this, that should be the aim. So you do bachelor's in electronics, but also follow that up with a master's in VLSI design. You can also do BE in computer science and master's in VLSI. So something like that is also doable. And the career opportunities are in many domains. So you can do design engineering, and I'll go through each one of them. Don't worry about taking notes. Rizwan sir can share the PPT. There is silicon validation, how to test if the design is working. Applications engineering, this works with the customer to make sure that our design is working on their systems. Firmware and software is fairly obvious. Packaging design, how to make the package for the PCB. This is an art in itself and science in itself. Product and test engineering, this is high volume manufacturing testing. Reliability engineering, we talked about that. They try to accelerate the failure and try to figure out how long the device will last. And then finally, hardware design for PCBs and things like that. Okay? And for design, the main responsibility is to design the circuits to the spec. You have the spec, you design the circuit, right? And they have these things called RTL design languages. RTL stands for register transfer logic. And you have these design languages like Verilog, VHDL, System C. These are similar to C, but not exactly C. And you describe the circuit in these languages, and then there are tools to make the actual circuits. Many more opportunities in this particular field compared to other fields that I'm going to talk about. Very good career growth and earning prospects, and also leadership opportunities. Meaning, if you want to become a general manager or something, this is the path you should take. But there is very high competition. The more people, the more competition, right? Then there is something called post-silicon. This is silicon engineering. This is where most of my work has been. The main responsibility is testing circuits to the spec. So this is also very not easy because you need to understand how they work in order to be able to test them better. And then the expertise here required is you also need firmware and software expertise, so C++, in addition to electronic fundamentals. You need to know electronic, and in addition to that, you need to know all these software packages. Also requires a system level thinking mindset, meaning you need to be able to figure out how this chip will work in the system. And you need to be able to visualize that and be able to do it. So it's a different type of skill set. Has very good career growth and earning prospects and leadership opportunities, especially because you have a lot of exposure to customers, and customers tell you how to design your next step, right? So this is very important. And it is a very good overall breadth exposure to how to do build semiconductors, right? It's not a very niche, it's not vertical, it's more horizontal. And in firmware and software, main responsibility is to write the firmware for the chip. Usually C++ and other languages like, there are various other new languages coming up. They enable the hardware functionality. So without this, you can't really sell your chips. So you have to understand how the chip works. So you do need to write software for them. Very good career growth and earning prospects and leadership opportunities simply because you are also in the critical path of selling the chip to the customers. Usually requires a degree in computer science and several courses in electronics. You need to be able to understand electronics. If you don't understand electronics, you're not going to be a good software engineer. But you do require good knowledge of C and C++ also. So this is a kind of cross-functional requirement. And then the last one is I clubbed everything else into business because you need people to keep track of marketing and sales and all of that, right? Usually requires an MBA with prior experience. So if you don't have a prior experience and have an MBA, it doesn't help because you need to understand the business of semiconductors. Business of semiconductors is where you will spend most of your life. How to price them, how to make sure the customers get them on time. There are other opportunities like program management where you're taking care of the schedules, you're working cross-functionally. And it's a good part to management and leadership because again, this is a very broad view of the whole thing, so you don't have a niche opportunity. So that was my last slide for all of you students. So we can open it for questions. And just want to check your time check. There are 7, I think it will be good. So hopefully that was useful.
Your questions you can ask.
Yeah.
Just raise your hand and you can bring and ask questions.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned that India wants to become a semiconductor powerhouse, but it isn't there yet.
Yes.
So what are the factors in your purview from industry standpoint? Those are restricting us and how can we get there and achieve the dream?
Actually, the trade growth will happen. It's not, I mean, two things that are going to help India. Number one, is there is a lot of local consumption because our economy is growing really fast, right? And then the second thing is a lot of Indians abroad are in this field. So there is no lack of skills in this particular domain. The thing that has hampered us so far is that we have not had a good policy from the government and support from the government, but the government realizes this now. And there are also other confluences because China has cornered a lot of this market, and the West and China don't see eye to eye on many things. Yeah, the West is more or less democratic, China is more or less autocratic. So they all want China plus one strategy, meaning they will do something in China, but they want a second equally dependable country. And there is no other country on the planet that produces as many engineers as we do. And even if 5% of those engineers are very good, that's more than 5x of most other countries. Right. So that just that we will be good.
16 lakh we are producing every year.
Right.
Then why we were so late in thinking of it?
Again, because I think, well, number one, we started late, right? In semiconductor manufacturing has never been peaceful. If you remember in early 90s, we had Semiconductor Complex Limited. It's a government enterprise, right? Government enterprise is generally basically they're generally inefficient because they're not private sectors. And the cost of capital in dollars was not available to India in those days. So the IT revolution, and essentially, if you trace it back, I'm not a politician, okay? So don't take this as an endorsement of any particular political party. But one thing that the Rajiv Gandhi government did well is figured out that investment in science and technology is important. And Sam Pitroda, if you remember, was the first one who brought telecoms, and these were, the rotary phones, these are like landline phones. And they were very expensive in those days. The exchanges were very expensive. So Sam Pitroda's contribution was that he built those exchanges in India. And I remember when I was growing up that we had one phone and we were on like the list for tens of years to get the second phone. But when we got the second phone, it was because of Sam Pitroda. They came back and asked, do you want the third one? So
They targeted the number of exchange.
Right.
Wanted to
Right.
increase that.
Right. And eventually what happened was they realized that they could do this in India. And so the IT revolution happened almost organically because of the number of software does not have site fidelity. So because software does not have site fidelity, you can be in India, you can pay this guy half the money that an American is making, still 10 times more than the average Indian is making. So he's happy, the corporate is happy, everybody's happy, right? So you start like that, and then they started bringing a lot of dollars into the country. So the country could afford to buy the wireless communication equipment. So in literally 10 years, you went from no cell phones to everybody having a smartphone. How many of you don't have a smartphone yet? No, I mean just like literally no one, right?
You must have forgotten that if at all somebody raises hand.
Right. But this was not even like thinkable.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago. Right?
Sir, you mentioned about that ancillary units.
Yes.
So what India has any prospects related to that?
I think they are great. I mean, part of my reason for coming this time is to look at them. We are actually going to build that in India. We build a lot of things in Taiwan. We want to actually start building everything in India. So that is one of the key reasons for my visit.
That is last bottom two of that pyramid.
Yes,
Bottom two of that pyramid.
So it costs less
yes,
compared to.
correct.
So you said next 10 years we'll go 3.5x.
Yes.
Where the world will go?
World is going to go from about 600 billion to about 1 trillion. So,
Will
uh,
again be 3.5 then? Or
Sorry?
at 27?
no, not, so the world is, so think of it this way, right? The world is going from 600 to 1 trillion. So that is less than 2x, right? So that is only, let's say 1.8x or so. India is going more than 3.5, more than double the speed every year. That's pretty impressive. We are going from 3% to 10%.
One more thing you added, sir, that about services you can
Yes.
provide.
Yeah, and we already provide a lot of services. And these are really good jobs. These are not,
Yes.
these are not like low-end IT jobs. These are fairly complicated, they're extremely technical, and you can really make a career out of it.
But they all such ancillary units will need a parent company who will
Not necessarily.
okay.
Not necessarily, because when we work with certain companies, they don't have a parent company, they are the company.
Okay.
Okay. And so PCB manufacturing is a big thing for us because we don't want to get into that. We just want to contract with someone to make it for us. We just want a certain quality at a certain price. If they can deliver, we are more than happy to use their services.
But sometime back you said that you are going to, you pick up generally from 2 to 3 institutes from this,
Yes,
from India.
yes,
So what about the other institute, if they go level 2, level 3,
yes.
will they have an opportunity to work? at
Yeah,
their
actually, it is not so much that we pick from certain universities, we're just comfortable with them today. But there is no reason not to pick from others. All we have to make sure is that they actually can do the work that we expect them to do. That's it. There is no, I mean, at the end of the day, there is a certain growth each company has. My company is a fairly small semiconductor company. We have about 7,000 employees, 6,000 actually just now. So it's pretty small. Intel has close to 120,000 employees, right? So Intel is huge. Nvidia, Broadcom, Qualcomm, these are very large companies. Ours is not as large. And the number of people we have in India is about 1,400. Out of 6,000, about 1,400. But like Google and Apple, they have their own semiconductor divisions that are larger than our entire company, right? Just their semiconductor division. So there is a lot of opportunity there. There's absolutely no dearth of opportunity. If you are technically good, no dearth of opportunity at all.
A hypothetical question.
Yes.
Imagine, right, you are passing out now from VNI here.
Yes.
You want to maybe start your startup.
Yes.
And that too from now. So what exactly will you do?
Okay, let me put it this way. It's extremely hard to do that. Not because the person is not intelligent, but this is such a heavily technical field that you do need industry experience. We are graduating from today from VNIT. Trust me, you're not going to be successful. Most people, 99.99999% of the people cannot be successful because they just don't have the industry experience. And the other thing is, even at the lowest level, unless you're starting a consulting business, services business, it is doable if you're really, really smart and you're working on this on your own. But if you're starting anything in manufacturing, the cash outlay is so high that unless you have like some already money that you can invest, it's not going to happen. I mean, even I cannot invest that. Let's put it that way.
So some people failed, came back from US, they were from Nagpur.
Yes.
Came back to Nagpur, they failed, miserably failed. Went back,
Okay.
went back. And those people were 25, 30, 40 years plus experience.
Yes.
Failed miserably. I saw them, I
Yes.
saw their bedding.
Yes.
They're working beside me.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Very tough, very
One
tough.
more thing you mentioned, sir, that ecosystem.
Yes. I think the problem is it's not just the ecosystem, it's also very brutal. Meaning cost of it. I mean, there is no industry in India today that can fathom that you can depreciate at 11 lakh rupees a minute.
Yes.
A minute.
But now things will change, sir. With the new policy, government policy,
Things will-
endorsement, now
Yes.
things will change.
Because what will happen is, if you look at how they are putting the fabs together, they are not going into the business by themselves. They are going into the business with TSMC or with SMIC or one of those guys who already know how to do it. And they will bring up their sole goal to bring up in India would be to make sure that they're as efficient as they have outside of India, right? So that expertise will come in. If you have to make all the mistakes and learn, trust me, there is not enough money in the world to allow you to make those mistakes.
The only way is to go with strong technology partner.
Correct. And that's why I said in my thing, crawl, walk, run. Don't try to run.
बाजू वाले हॉल सब ले चाहे
Yeah.
Sir, as in second year student,
बता दीजिएगा
what steps and what should I learn to become a successful entrepreneur in designing and ancillary as well as in PCB manufacturing?
Sure. So I think, I mean, the key thing here is to understand and do really well in the technical courses. You can, so I can tell you the courses for PCB manufacturing, you need to know hardware design and hardware layout and something called SIPI, signal integrity, power integrity. Those type of courses you need. Beyond that, you also need, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to have a business mindset. So, start small. So there is something called bootstrapping. Start small, make enough money, keep investing more money and more money and grow, right? This is what Dhirubhai Ambani did long time ago. But as a second year student, you do have to do really well in technical courses first. Because without technical understanding of the business, it's very difficult to be successful. Like Mr. Khanna said, he has seen a lot of failure. You don't want to be yet another statistic.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, on the previous question someone asked around coming out of the college or pressure in the industry, you mentioned consulting or services could be a good way to learn the industry, get exposure.
Sure.
What could be the services or consulting that industry one can offer beyond the technical competency that industry would need as the industry grows?
So, well, for business side of consulting, there are ample folks. So, for example, large consulting houses, they have their own semiconductor practices, right? So what they will do is they will actually hire freshers and train them in that industry. So semiconductor industry to them is just one vertical. They can do pharmaceuticals, they can do this, they can do everything, right? But as a fresher, as an individual, it's really hard to offer any consulting services when you yourself are not the expert, right? So you need a fairly broad understanding of the industry itself to offer consulting. Either you have to have a broad understanding or you have to have a deep understanding in one of the domains. And that comes with time and dedication. So expecting that out of college is nonsensical. Right? I mean, it's just not going to happen. Like, nobody comes out of, let me give you another metaphor for this. Nobody comes out of college and designs a car. Why is that? They just don't know enough. It's not that they're not capable. They just don't know enough when they have just graduated.
They need to understand the difference between electronics and computing. Software.
Yeah.
Software पढ़ रहे हैं, निकल रहे हैं, नौकरी मिल रही है, entrepreneur बन रहे हैं, सब startup हो रहा है, सब कुछ हो रहा है. Electronics में things doesn't go that.
No, because software entrepreneurs don't have as big a startup cost.
Yes.
The hardware entrepreneurs have to have a large startup cost. And that's just the nature of the business. Right? The reasons fabless companies came about is because they couldn't afford to maintain their fabs. So they died. Anybody who was dumb enough to keep their fab eventually died as a company. Right? And then the fabless entrepreneurs came about because it was cheaper to start a fabless than to start with a fab. I don't know of a single semiconductor company that went public in the last probably 15 to 20 years that had their own fab. If you had a fab, it was like an albatross around your neck. you couldn't shake it. You know.
One more clarification question.
Yes.
COVID had a big impact, right, on the semiconductor.
Yes.
So what are the learnings because of COVID and what new things you're seeing which have expert?
COVID, so semiconductor industry is a very cyclic industry. So what happens is, if I say I want a chip today and I place an order today, you don't get chip for 6 months. So there is a lag of about 6 months in this manufacturing phase. And what happens is, in COVID, initially people didn't realize, everybody thought, I mean, including us, by the way, we are no smarter than the average. Regardless of what people tell you, even executives like us are dumb enough, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. So our thought was that, ek do hafta chalega, then we'll go back to work. That was everybody's thinking, right? 2 weeks became months, month became a year, right? Then you start sinking in, and 6 months you start sinking in that you're going to be home for a while now. And we were all working from home. Then you realize that you need these telecommunication equipment, audio AV equipment to even have productive meetings like Zoom and all this. And that just drove the demand like non-linear. So everybody wanted a camera, everybody wanted speakers, everybody wanted, faster computer, whatever, right? So the semiconductor demand just exploded. But there is a lag. Just because there is demand doesn't mean there is supply. You start today, they're going to get supply 6 months later. That is just the rule, right? There is no way to short circuit this. 6 months later, COVID is finished because everybody has a, right? You don't need any of this. Demand collapse. Okay? So we went like this, everybody built up the inventory, and then you can't even give it away for free. Half the companies went out of business, right? Everybody had like quarters after quarters of losses, right? And it is really bad in both ways. When you have the demand that you cannot build, you know you can get the revenue, but you cannot because you cannot ship anything, right? And if you overbuild, then you also have the other problem. You have all this inventory that you cannot sell, nobody wants it, right? So it's a very like famine or feast type of industry. So one thing that this industry keeps learning over and over and over is that the famine and feast cycles are here to stay and that they will never go away, right? And with the increasing capital expenditure, they may actually get worse. So now they control it very, very tightly. Actually, as executives, they are asked to work in these simulations. So if the demand says 8, if I'm a company guy, I will never build 8. I'll build sharp. Okay, because if I can't sell, that's much worse. If I may build 6, but not 8. If I build 8 and I cannot sell 4, I have to throw them away and then take the loss. Because this is very, this dynamic of the 6 months of wait is very bad. And it cannot be helped. There is no way to help it. In fact, the 6 months may become 9 months, maybe make it even worse.
Probably that's the competition. So you can manage that much better because we are really living into the volatile.
Yeah, and there are companies that do this extremely well, including our company. We are watching this like a hawk. And there are also predictive algorithms that are not looking at just our customers. They are looking at what their customers are buying or the actual reseller is selling. So there are multiple levels of signals that come to allow us to predict, forecast, if you would, appropriately. And that forecasting is very difficult. It's not trivial.
Sir, since 2014, the admissions in engineering college, in particular in electronic branch, were going down very. And now recently they are okay.
Right.
So what would be the reason, whether it was universal all over world or it was only in India? Demand was less. What could be the reason?
I think clearly the demand is less. And like everything else, there is a half-life for all of this. So let's say I graduated today with engineering degree in electronics and I can't find a job. Okay. 6 months later, you retain less of what you learned. 1 year later, you retain even less of what you learned, right? So your hireability goes down as time progresses after your graduation. And I don't know what happened in 2014, actually. I really can't think of anything specific happening in 2014. But clearly, the supply and demand was not in balance. In US, they only produce about 50,000 electronics engineers a year. 50, that's it. Computer science a lot more. But electronics very less. Because electronics is also extremely hard as a subject. Electronics to me, for someone in US that is poor, if they can actually get an electronics degree, they're guaranteed job. Guaranteed, 100% guaranteed, meaning not even 90%. Because they have the lottery of birth, they have a US citizenship. 70 to 80% of engineers in electronics in US are not US born. It's a very high percentage. So if you are US born, you can actually get a job. So I think all I can think of, there must have been a serious imbalance. The colleges oversold the utility of the degree, if you would, and the industry was not able to absorb the number of people.
IT was also responsible. The boom in IT and sudden core industry. So that comparison took it down.
In a way, in industry in US.
Yes.
Are we competing with China or we are ahead in terms of Indian engineers there? Or there is no competition?
There is no such competition. I mean, Indians are equally good compared to Chinese. But overall, I mean, it's not about India or China, it's about your ability to deliver. China is very focused. China also has there are pluses and minuses. India has its own benefits because we have our own internal feedback mechanism that China doesn't have. So if China makes a wrong decision, the top guy makes a wrong decision, the bottom guy will lose his neck if he speaks against the top guy. In US, that's not the case. If you think that this is a stupid idea, my guys can come and tell me, Vivek, you're an idiot. And I'm not take them out, right? I mean, I'll listen to why he's thinking. I may still disagree with him. I'll say, you are an idiot. Sit down. You don't know enough, right? I can say that. But in China, you can't even say that. And so there are pros and cons. When things work, they work beautifully. When things don't work, they work bad. Really bad. Like right now, they have a real estate problem. They have huge amounts of real estate and literally no demand. So if you want to sell your flat today in China, there are 99 to 100 buyers, sellers for every flat that you want to buy. So if you bought it for, let's say 10 lakh rupees, if you get 1 lakh for it, you should be happy. Right? It's really that bad. So can we wrap it up?
Yes.
I have
Last bit.
Sir, what resources or platform or communities will you recommend us to so we get to know about technological advancement in semiconductor industry?
I think, there are lots of social platforms that are pretty good. LinkedIn is very good. And in general, I think YouTube, if you know how to find good content, is very good. Other ones, I don't really know. I'm not a very social person. I don't really know. I'm quite sure Facebook won't have much. But, there are also IEEE and all those guys also have courses. So those platforms are good.
And so I have one more question. Like the machine, there are machines like there are many supercomputers which are running ChatGPT and this all. But sir, in the future, is it possible that that supercomputers may get minimized in the size of nanoparticles?
They are already there. The quantum computing is different. It's not Sorry, that's my alarm for it. The quantum computers are different. It's not like you think you can keep miniaturizing. It's not like that. Quantum computers are fundamentally very different from silicon-based computers. And yes, they will keep miniaturizing at a pace we don't know. Someone asked me a question earlier about Moore's law. Moore's law is dead, meaning we are not going to have that pace happen unless there is a total revolution in something totally different. So, for example, quantum computing, they figure out some way of like doing it really low power. You could start seeing it again. But yes, the question is, it will continue. That means it will continue.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. So my question is like I'm a student and I will look forward for placement. So as if you are hiring someone, what qualities and technologies you will look in a fresher?
That was a slide given.
Yeah, there is, you can actually read the presentation, but I'll give you like two quick answers. One is if you are going to do it in electronics, you do need to have those electronics courses and you need to do really well in those. And second is if you want to start getting into industry where you are designing or where you want to become a design engineer or whatever, then you do need to show the initiative. Do something on your own. People always like that. Like if I am looking for someone and it's I see initiative, I like that better than someone who doesn't show initiative. Even I will also say one thing. Your education only gets you the first job. The second job, you're on your own. Or anything beyond the first job. You can say a job, it could be your own company.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for a wonderful and deep insight into semiconductor industry and the current growth. As sir rightly said, Dr. Vivek Khanzode sir has revived the basics of core engineering to us, and most importantly, he has spotted light on the prerequisites required by the students for developing their career into this wonderful industry. I thank you so much, sir. To sum up, I request Dr. Vivek Nanoti sir to propose vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone, and a big round of applause for that. I mean, what a success. Almost everyone wanted to ask question. And like that speaks about success. Otherwise, question पूछो ना. ये बोलने की जरूरत नहीं. Question मत पूछो बोलने की बारी आई. So wonderful, sir. What an insightful, thought-provoking, and a kind of brainstorming it happened. Thank you so much for that taking us right from PN junction to PNP and the 18 Pro, and from that knowledge, I mean, it always, as a physicist also, it always tells me like when we shifted from, I tell my student our watch, Apple Watch, and then we shifted that this action came and only this action came. So a lot of machine learning algorithms have undergone, and then they must have sensed, the sensors must have gone the blood flow and all that. But ye sab ho gaya. But no one cared that number of transistors were 2.56 in series 9, series 8, and series 9 were 5.6 billion transistors. So it should lead to that basic fundamental, and that is every student should learn that it's not software, it's not that superficial knowledge, it is the depth into it that he has been intentionally putting forth that ye sab hai, lekin fundamental of electronics you have to be very sharp about, very clear about. So we have taken like billion, trillion dollars to fundamentals, and why Nagpur can be like he has already mentioned. Tanvir sir का तो mission है कि हर कोई industry अमिताभ sir की भी वो mission है. So thank you so much sir for taking us to that entire journey. He maintained his time. We started bit late. We are sorry for that, but still he could finish 35 slides. It was a wonderful experience, and all our NF team who were like Amitabh sir, our national chair, Tanvir Mirza sir, Rizwan sir, yes, of course you know, and all others who helped. And in spite of Diwali vacations, everywhere like up to 13th Diwali vacations are going on, but still students came, they were so much interested, the faculty came. Big thank you to Anjuman College of Engineering and Zakiuddin sir, Tanvir sir for making this a grand success. People took interest. Next, I mean, इतना सब कुछ सीख लिया है कि अभी इतने सारे थॉट्स आ रहे हैं and that is the success. So please don't forget what he has, brought those seeds into your minds. Start thinking on that. Start preparing on fundamentals. Start thinking of business. Start thinking of understanding all those things. So it was a very good curtain raiser for all that. You have GLT as a tradition, right? We just had one in Anjuman. Before that, we had one in IIM, and all such GLTs, which is a monthly feature, or this, I think, third in this one last 30 days. So global leadership talks have been always insightful, and one such wonderful we just had and witnessed it. Once again, thank you so much, sir. And in spite of your busy schedule, you would find time for us. All of us are like, let us join for a cup of coffee, tea, and some high tea in the neighboring room. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Before that-
And I request Tanvir Mirza, sir, to please felicitate him with the memento. Thank you. A small token of love and respect. Thank you. Thank you. Photograph in must.
I think we should have one good photograph in NFT.
Why not? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have that, and all of you are invited for the performance.
Hey, you don't. I am done.
Thank you, sir.